All right, let's get right into it. We're going to dive into the really complex world of free speech, where the lines, well, they're a lot blurrier than you might think. We'll unpack the big ideal we all talk about, a recent Supreme Court case that really put it to the test, and a pretty shocking reversal that shows just how fragile this whole thing can be. I mean, this is the question at the heart of it all today, isn't it? It's this constant tension between our constitutional ideals and the reality of modern politics. Is the government just offering helpful guidance, or is it actually unconstitutional pressure? This question, it cuts right to the heart of what the First Amendment even means in our digital age. So let's start with the ideal, the purest, most powerful interpretation of the First Amendment. It's a concept that sounds so simple on the surface, but believe me, it is anything but. We all know these words. They feel so direct, so absolute. They're the bedrock of free expression in America. But really, the entire history of the First Amendment has been one long argument over a single question. Where exactly does this protection end? Now, some people, including former Supreme Court justices like Hugo Black and William O. Douglas, they took this language literally. They believed it was an unalterable command. To them, no law meant exactly what it said. No law, period. And this is where that absolutist ideal gets really interesting. It sounds so pure, but in the real world, almost nobody is a true absolutist. I mean, think about it. No one seriously argues you have a constitutional right to commit fraud, or blackmail someone, or conspire to commit murder, even though all those things are done with speech. And that's exactly why the Supreme Court has almost always used a balancing approach, weighing free speech against other really important social needs. Okay, so let's move from that ideal to the messy reality of a recent Supreme Court case that tested these exact limits. This is where all that high-minded theory crashes right into the real-world actions of the government and social media giants. So picture this. It's the middle of the pandemic and the 2020 election. Federal officials are constantly talking to platforms like Facebook and Twitter. They're flagging posts, they're questioning content policies, and they're really pushing these companies to do more about what they see as dangerous misinformation. And this raised a huge question. Was this just helpful communication? Or was it something more, something like unconstitutional coercion? The court came back with a 6-3 decision siding with the government. But here's the fascinating part. It's why they sided with them. It wasn't because they gave the government's actions a clean bill of health. No, it was about something much more technical. Yeah, the whole case ended up hinging on this legal concept called standing. And what that basically means is to sue the government, you can't just say they did something bad. You have to prove that their actions directly caused your specific injury. And for the people suing in this case, that link was just incredibly hard to prove. The timeline was just so critical here. The court looked at the evidence and saw that platforms were already taking down this exact kind of content before the government really started leaning on them. So when a plaintiff got their post taken down, was it because of an email from the White House, or was it because of the company's own pre-existing policy? The majority said you just can't prove it was the former. But wow, there was a powerful dissent from Justice Alito. He basically argued that the majority got so bogged down in the legal weeds of standing that they completely missed the forest for the trees. He saw what he called a clear, documented campaign of government pressure, and he worried the court was basically handing future administrations a playbook for how to bully platforms without getting caught. All right, now to see just how easily these principles can get flipped on their head, depending on who's in charge, let's walk through a hypothetical scenario. It's fictional, for sure, but it perfectly illustrates how fast the politics of free speech can change. So in this scenario, following the assassination of activist Charlie Kirk, Jimmy Kimmel goes on his show and delivers a monologue. He accuses the MAGA gang of trying to score political points off the tragedy, and he mocks President Trump's reaction. This monologue, it set off an immediate and really powerful government response. This sequence of events is a textbook example of something called censorship by proxy. See, the government didn't directly censor Kimmel. What it did was have a government official, the FCC chair, use the threat of taking away ABC's hugely valuable broadcast licenses to pressure the company into silencing a critic. It gets you the exact same result as direct censorship, just with one extra step. And this, right here, is what's been called the free speech reversal. Before this hypothetical incident, you had President Trump positioning himself as a defender against cancel culture. But after Kimmel's monologue, the rhetoric does a complete 180. The very principles of free speech are just tossed aside the second they become politically inconvenient. So let's pull all these threads together now. the high-minded ideal, the complex legal reality, and that whiplash-inducing political reversal to get to the central question that we're all facing today. So, what are the big takeaways? Well, first, this idea that free speech is totally absolutist has never really been the reality. The real debate is about the unique and incredibly powerful role of the government. When the government speaks, it's not like when you or I speak. It always comes with the implied power of the state right behind it. And this helps us get past a simple speech versus censorship debate. A private group boycotting a show is just not the same thing as a government agency threatening a company's broadcast license. The core constitutional question is always about preventing the government from using its massive power to do indirectly what the First Amendment says it can't do directly. And that brings us to the final critical question. In the Murthy case, the Supreme Court didn't really draw that line because of a legal technicality. The Kimmel scenario shows us exactly what happens when that line gets crossed with brute force. The answer to this question, where is that line, is going to define the future of free expression for all of us in the digital age.